Hola, hola. No, no hay chicha. Hola. ¿Me oís desde atrás? ¿Sí? Ah, vale, vale, pensaba que no había chicha. Buenas tardes a todos, gracias por estar aquí. Sé que hay unos cuantos dando vueltas intentando aparcar, ya sabéis que la zona es un poco complicada. No, pero estoy... Y nada, yo quería, antes de empezar y la ponencia, quería hacer un par de reflexiones con vosotros, bueno, o daros una serie de novedades, algunos las sabéis, otros a lo mejor no tanto, que han ocurrido últimamente relacionado pues casi con lo que sois todos, que es que sois Mivers, ¿no? Joder, yo le he puesto un Mac, sabéis que lo odio. A ver. Bloqueado. ¿No? A ver. Sí. Bueno, las novedades que para todos más o menos claras, pero os cuento las principales. Esto no funciona bien. La primera es que vamos a tener una sede adicional a esta en Massachusetts, porque ya sabéis que a partir de este año hay una parte del programa que se hace allí, se hace en Harvard. ¿Qué vamos a tener en Harvard? Vamos a tener un seminario de Mind Opening todos los años, va a ser una especie de colofón del MIP, y en ese seminario vamos a impartir un título que va a ser de ISDE y un título del Real Colegio Complutense de Harvard. Van a llegar aproximadamente 20 profesores de Harvard y MIT para darnos una especie de reflexión en mind opening de todo lo que está ocurriendo en entrepreneurship, en redes sociales, en movilidad, en tecnología y en sociedad digital. Lo cual va a ser una especie de coronada de refresco de lo que va a venir en los próximos años, seguramente a luego tenemos también algo nuevo, que es hemos lanzado una nueva plataforma de e-learning que se llama Internet Academy, que es ya de facto la primera plataforma de e-learning sobre conocimiento digital del mundo hispanohablante, por lo menos. Este año tendremos 80 y pico cursos de competencias digitales que os van a ayudar a todos vosotros a seguir profundizando en lo que ya hemos aprendido en el máster. Lo cual, yo creo que no es muy interesante. Luego, entramos con una nueva configuración del máster, que es el máster, además de los 15 módulos académicos que tenemos ahora y del nuevo campus virtual que tenemos, introduce también el proyecto troncal que ya conocíais, talleres de herramientas y el seminario de Harvard, junto con la posibilidad de hacer 2 cursos de e-learning de recomendación para que podáis profundizar en los temas que más os llaman la atención de lo que hemos visto a lo largo del año. Esto también son cosas que se pueden disfrutar cuando ya has hecho el máster y quieres profundizar sobre ello. Y luego, por supuesto, tenemos todos los talleres de reciclaje que hacemos, cosas como esta, junto con todo lo que tiene que ver a la comunidad de reciclaje. Esto hace que al final tengamos un ecosistema que empezamos construyendo con el MIP, como ya sabéis, y con los MIDES, que ha seguido con otra serie de productos formativos como el programa de presidentes o seminarios y compañía que hacemos, el programa en Harvard, que sigue con todos nuestros esfuerzos por el tema de las startups, desde el fondo de inversiones que hemos ido haciendo en startups, la aceleradora de la que somos copartícipes, que se llama Top 6 Lab, aceleramos 5 startups cada 6 meses, el laboratorio de innovación en el que nosotros lanzamos ideas de innovación las lanzamos nosotros mismos como profesores, y todo un entramado académico en el que tenemos nuestro Scientific Advisory Board con gente de prácticamente 34 universidades que tenemos ya en nuestro foro, con acuerdos con otras universidades, como la y el último convenio en Harvard, que es algo realmente disruptivo para lo que estamos haciendo. Como conocéis bien ya todo lo que estamos haciendo a nivel de activismo digital, a través también del documental de emprendimiento que estamos haciendo en el Conferencia, y una novedad de este año para muchos de nosotros es que hay una formación para ayudar a digitalizar a las ONGs. Y eso es algo que pensamos que es muy relevante y que está en el ADN de todos los MIBES. Ahora estamos trabajando con UNICEF y Ashoka, pero la idea es trabajar con 3 o 4 ONGs cada año. Y por último, tenemos una iniciativa en el pipeline que saldrá dentro de unos meses, que es un máster de programación. Vamos a sacar un máster para ayudar a los programadores a que se vuelquen más a Internet, porque hay muchos programadores que saben de código, pero no saben de negocio digital. Entonces queremos ir a ese colectivo. Eso, junto con el tema de Internet Academy, nos mete ya en un ecosistema que, como veis, empieza a ser muy rico y del cual el MIB es el centro. Todo esto nos ayuda a muchas cosas. And now I'm gonna start in English. This is bringing us new friends, and one of the friends, the new friends we've just met in the last weeks, is Steve Cadigan. Steve Cadigan is a person that you will know in a second. He's very close from us in terms of feelings, of understanding understanding the business and the life. And Steve has worked for 3 of the most important companies of Silicon Valley. One was Cisco, you know Cisco. The other one was Electronic Arts, and the last one was LinkedIn. He worked in the human resources field in all these companies, and the last one was had the chance to start working in LinkedIn when it was a small 400 people startup, and in 3 years' time he took that company from a 400 employees company to a 4,000 employees company that was already in the stock market and had presence in a lot of markets. Now LinkedIn is a company with 225 members or users. We say here users, but Steve told me that for them they are members. And LinkedIn is a company that has changed the way we do business, the way we have relationships with other people, and the way we face the professional world. So let me say hello to Steve and welcome to Spain. I hope you live here, because Steve now is thinking on what he's gonna do in his future, and I keep on telling him that Spain is a good chance.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Okay, so can everyone hear me okay if I get away from the microphone? All right? Okay. It's a pleasure to be visiting you here, and as Nacho mentioned, we're recent friends. I met a good friend of his in Silicon Valley by the name of Alfredo Rivera. And as you would have it, you talk about football or soccer as an international sport. I actually was coaching a soccer team for my 9-year-old son. And that's what I spend a lot of time doing now, is coaching for I have 3 boys. And I got a phone call from the commissioner of the soccer league. And imagine you're in America and you're coaching your American boys how to play soccer. And the league commissioner said, "We've got a family just moved from Spain. Do you have extra room on your team?" And I said, "Yes, of course," because I knew he was going to be good. We know you guys know how to play football. And sure enough, I got to meet Alfredo, and he has brought his exciting venture called Nomaders from here and taking a crack at trying to make it big in Silicon Valley and trying to leverage the incredible ecosystem that is Silicon Valley. But so anyway, he introduced me to Nacho. I told him I was very interested in telling the story of the lessons that I learned, the mistakes that we made in building this incredible company, which by many measures is one of the best IPOs that's happened in technology in the last 3 or 4 years. It's been very successful. But anyway, I'm here really to help share that story with you. And my style is very informal. If you have any questions, please raise your hand if you would like me to talk about something more, because my whole purpose here is to inform and have some fun. And I've mainly tried to deliver this in a story-based form. So I'm going to tell some stories as we go through this, okay? But first I got to make a confession to you that I'm from Silicon Valley, but I'm very new to the world of understanding the real power of social networks, for example. And my story begins when I was interviewing with LinkedIn. In the summer of, actually it was the spring of 2009, I interviewed with the whole executive team at LinkedIn, and I said, I'm going to show these guys. I know how this internet stuff works. I'm hip with the social networks. And so when I was finished interviewing with the entire executive team and the chairman and the founder of the company, I sent them all a LinkedIn invitation, join my network. And I thought, I can show these guys, I know how to do this stuff. And that day, they all accept my invitation, okay? And then the next day, something happened which I didn't know was going to happen. Do you know what happens to your network the next day if you accept an invitation from somebody? Your whole network gets broadcast. Steve is now connected to the CEO, the chairman, the CFO, the COO, the VP sales, the general counsel, boom. And so my whole network found out that I was over at LinkedIn doing an interview. And the one person I didn't want to find out called me on my phone the next day. It's my boss. I know you're interviewing at LinkedIn. I went, oh shit. If I don't get this job, I am so screwed. But that was a big turning point for me personally, because it made me recognize that I had to raise my game, that the world was changing, and the tools we use every day need a little bit of attention. And I didn't know that there's a feature in my settings menu that I could turn off the broadcast. So after that, I turned off the broadcast. But anyway, I'm here to just share my story from my perspective. It was a great ride. We learned a lot of things. And so let's get started. It's interesting that I'm here this week because this week is the 10-year birthday for LinkedIn. They turned 10 years old on Cinco de Mayo. And they've done an incredible amount in 10 years. In fact, if I look back, the global footprint that was laid in a very short time, starting in 2003, okay, with 14 people in Reid Hoffman's house in just over 10 years. The site is now in 17 languages. There's 4,000 people. There's over about a $20 billion market cap. As Nacho mentioned, there's 225 million members. Not all those members go to the site every day, but about 40-50% go to the site every day now. And it's now a global function that's impacting markets and ways people are doing business. And we constantly get stories around how LinkedIn has changed people's lives. They found a new opportunity. They found a way to use their skills that they never knew how to use before. But so I'm going to do a reverse of what most people do in a presentation. I'm not going to take you from the beginning to the end. I'm going to start at the end, and then I'm going to go to the beginning. Because I think it's pretty interesting if you understand the real magnitude of what we're talking about. For every one of the executive team, there were about 9 of us on the executive team working with the CEO, running the company. This was realizing a dream. I left California in 2002 and I went to Asia for 2 years. And I never thought I'd go back to California. And I went to Canada for 4 years after that. But after a while, I was hitting my mid-40s going, man, I've got the sweetest part of my career in front of me. I want to go back to the gold mine of Silicon Valley and take one more bite at the apple before I settle down in a place like Vancouver where I was living, which was more of a lifestyle city. So in many ways, it really was a dream opportunity. And many people who are in the technology world, this is the dream, to join a company and to go public. And for me personally, I'd never been a company smaller than 1,000 people. So 400 was like as small as I'd ever even conceived. And I'd never worked for a private company before either. So that was very new. But what was really appealing to me as a human resource person was to be able to take all the lessons from my big company experience and apply all those lessons and build something the way I wanted to build it. To build something fresh, something different. And I'll be honest with you, I've learned more in my career working for big companies about how not to do something than how to do something. There's a lot of things I saw that I didn't like, how people were managed, how teams were led, how people communicated, the politics that would form. So we were really committed as a leadership team, and I in particular, that we wanted to build a really special company. But also I want you to put yourself in my shoes as someone who's been for almost 30 years a talent expert, to go to a company and have a chance to practice your craft, but also in a company that's building products that are changing your industry, the recruiting industry, which is a big part of my universe, was really compelling. And also to be able to become a sales person for that business and to be able to become a product consultant for the teams building all the products. That was a huge draw for me to be able to join the organization. So in many ways, it was an HR dream job when I joined. If you take a look at the performance of the company, as I was running through a second ago, it really is phenomenal. The last quarter that they just announced 2 weeks ago, they had $3 million in revenue for the quarter. So they're on a ramp now to be close to $1.5 billion in revenue from nothing only 10 years prior. As I mentioned, the market cap's around $20 billion, depends on the fluctuation of the share price that day. But that means they built about $2 billion of value every year, if you think about it that way. That's pretty powerful value. The other thing that people don't know about LinkedIn, and we always got frustrated by this, but we just realized, well, we're not the sexy kid in town. Facebook's the sexy kid in town. Everyone was always comparing us to Facebook. And we were like Facebook in one simple way, but in most ways we weren't like Facebook. But as we started to figure out how we're going to monetize the business, today LinkedIn monetizes 3 times per member, and maybe more than Facebook does. And Wall Street's recognizing that. And that's why you see one of the highest price to equity ratios, 1,000 PE. That's the highest I've ever seen in my life. Some of the analysts say it defies gravity to have such a high PE. But people are believing in the future because while LinkedIn has fewer members, the value that they're deriving and the revenue from each member is extremely greater than Facebook. So I want to take you forward to the day that we went public, and then I'll take you back to the beginning. So May 19th, 2011, I want you to imagine that you've been working hard in all the companies that you're working at now or that you're going to found going forward, and you've had a whole career, and your dream is to one day go public. And so you fly to New York City, to Wall Street, and we'd selected to go with the New York Stock Exchange. In the States, there's usually 2 choices you have, NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. And I'll tell you guys a little inside story. Most of the technology companies are listed on which exchange? Do you know? NASDAQ, right? Very few of the technology companies are listed on New York Stock Exchange. We chose the New York Stock Exchange for one, well, there was a few reasons, but one pretty interesting reason. When NASDAQ came to sell why we should list our company on their index, do you know what they said? We're going to market your stock really well. We're going to market it on Facebook. And we said, you don't know who we are. And when the New York Stock Exchange came to us, they said, all of our leadership loves LinkedIn. We all have LinkedIn memberships. We're buying your product. We want to be more than just we want you to be more than just a customer. We want to be a partner with you because we think our companies share a very similar vision. And so that was one of the reasons why we picked the New York Stock Exchange. Anyway, I want you to imagine waking up the morning that you're about to tell the world that you're, a real company, you're going public. And you round the corner, you go down Broad Street, you take a left on Wall Street, and you face the New York Stock Exchange, and you see this picture right in front of you. You see your company banner covering the front of the New York Stock Exchange. And there was about 9 of us and some of our board members walking around the corner. We saw that. We all just sort of took a jolt. It was very emotional to see something that you built finally get to the point where you're introducing that to the whole world. So we had a really fun day in New York when we went public. And you get to go up there and ring the bell, right? Ding, ding, ding. And they take a quick picture. I'm the only guy whose mouth is open. You see that guy in the end go, oh. I didn't know when the picture was going to be taken. And there's a whole funny story about who's going to be there and who's going to stand where, because some people in this picture weren't supposed to be in the picture, but they decided to run up and be part of the fun. So I was the last person up there because I'm a guy, I trust people first. I'm not always concerned. So I show up late and there's like no spots in the front. I'm like, oh man. So I'm trying to like elbow my way. Oh, you go in the door behind the flag there and you have to elbow your way. So I got all the way there like in 2 seconds and boom, the bell rung. After the bell rung, all craziness broke out in the New York Stock Exchange. By the way, the New York Stock Exchange, the size of it is as big as this room here. I'm not kidding you. It's tiny. So imagine we're standing here, ding, ding, ding. What happened with the stock is it froze. The day our share price went out, we said $45, and the bidders couldn't agree on what the price was. And when we walked from the tower down to the floor, the traders were going numbers like 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 100, 110, 120. And we're looking at each other going, oh my God, this is insane. Well, it finally settled on 85, and that day it closed around 90. And that exceeded our wildest expectations. I was closing candidates to join LinkedIn 2 weeks before, saying like, well, yeah, and we thought we were going to go out at 30. And 2 months before that, we thought we were going to go out at 18. So to see the excitement build around your business was really a big thrill for all of us. And going to the New York Stock Exchange was truly amazing. So let me take you back to the beginning. So how did we get there? I still get goosebumps telling the story about the New York Stock Exchange. It was an amazing day. Go back to the beginning. 10 years ago in Palo Alto, California, Reid Hoffman, who was one of the original key employees at PayPal, decided to start a new enterprise. And they put together a few people and started the company. This was before Facebook was launched. They launched it on May 5th. And in 1 month, they had about 4,500 members. The whole premise of the business was, let's just connect people and keep up our networks. That was the idea, okay? And they didn't have an idea of how they were going to make money out of that. But they said, sounds valuable, right? Let's keep our contacts together. And, you know, as the world gets more complex and information gets bigger, isn't the value of your capabilities largely driven by who you know and not what you know? And so that was the sort of compelling point behind it. So Reid, who came from PayPal, started this, and the idea was to get people to help them manage their networks. So the next year, they added a few more people. They had around 20 people, and they did something which was really powerful to grow the membership base. They created something called Address Book Importer. And that, in any kind of social network, is huge. You allow people to import their address books, now they can invite people in a very viral fashion. That was a big stepping point. And then Groups was released, the first product on LinkedIn platform to allow you to connect with similar people with similar interests, either in the industry or similar, if you're from the same school, you want to have an alumni group and so forth. Membership started to grow. I'm going to show you in a few seconds the membership chart. So in 2005, we start, so 2 years after being founded, okay, they finally develop a product. And this product is a recruiting search product. And that product today sells around $700 million a year, the value of that product. It's a simple license fee that you sell to a business to be able to search with the idea of recruiting talent. And the other product that they released was a subscription. So if you're not a big company, you can buy a subscription and be able to find people, but not have as robust a system, okay? So the company is starting to make some money finally, but it took 2 years to get there, okay? It didn't happen overnight. In 2006, people still aren't really very aware of who LinkedIn is, but they finally became profitable with a staff of about 60 people, okay? And the two new features, again, that helped drive membership were something called PYMK. Does anyone know what that means? People you may know. I call that the virtual people watching module, like who's been checking me out. Do you all know that feature on LinkedIn? I look at it more than any other one. I'll admit it. I'm honest. Who's looking at me? And why are they looking at me? I'm curious. But that feature was released and started to drive a lot of traffic. And then the next one was recommendations, which is now taken off even more. And now people are endorsing skills. That's a big one that was released recently. So 2007, something happened which is not too uncommon. Some of the most high-profile companies in the world, like Apple, went through a situation like LinkedIn went through, where the founder decides, you know what, I'm not a CEO. I need to bring in someone who is a CEO. And so now, what are we? We're like 4 years into it, right? 2003 to 2007, Reed steps aside and hires a guy named Dan Nye to be the CEO of the company. Okay? That didn't turn out so well, candidly. And didn't turn out so well for a lot of reasons, but the large one was Reed wasn't really sure how to not be a CEO. The new CEO wasn't really sure where Reed was playing and where he wasn't playing. The board was confused, the customers were confused, the employees were confused. And it ended with Dan leaving the company in a little under 2 years. So it's a kind of a lesson, right? This is before I joined the organization, but it's like, wow, okay. It was a huge lesson for Reed. So when he did hire the next CEO, who I'll tell you about in a second, he decided that what he needed to do was really be clear about the borders between who's the chairman and founder and who's the CEO. And he decided to really play a much more behind-the-scenes role, more of a thought advisor than actually be active in the business. But that year, 2007, also marked the beginning of going global. And they opened up the first office in London. So for the first time, so what is it now? We're still about 4 years out. We finally have employees outside of the US, and membership is now starting to take off a little bit faster clip, and we're at about 10 million members. The big thing I've just mentioned to you, the CEO change that took place in 2009, was a big move. And they put a gentleman in place who's still there today, who is absolutely phenomenal, Jeff Weiner, who's out of Yahoo, and he'd never been a CEO before. Interesting choice. But Jeff was and is an incredible marketing visionary. He's a great leader, and he had built his pedigree primarily at Warner Brothers and at Yahoo. And so he came in. Reed realized with Jeff's arrival, I think, that his role is to be more of a coach than to be actively in the business and let Jeff run the show. That was also the year in 2009 that the site launched in Spanish and French. So the first time the site was released in new languages, and they hit 50 million members. So only 2 years prior they're at 10, and now they're at 50 million members. And now the recruiting business really starts to take off, which is the core product of the company. So now we're about 6 years in, and the business is really starting to take off to significant degrees. What's interesting when you think about the transition of 2008, 2009 was what was going on in the macroeconomic climate of 2008. The collapse of the banks, higher unemployment, a lot of career instability. There was a lot of concern at LinkedIn that maybe we picked the wrong business. Who wants to be in the recruiting business when nobody's recruiting? But what was actually quite beneficial to us was when people are not feeling secure in their jobs, what are they doing? They're getting their CVs out there, they're fine-tuning their profiles, and people were coming to LinkedIn. The membership was taking off. And some companies were starting to realize, especially in technology, you always really need to be recruiting technical talent, and there are certain segments that really started to take off. So let me speed forward again to 2010 now, because this is when we really started to drive our growth internationally and putting employees outside of not just in Europe, but outside in Asia as well. So I joined in the latter part of 2009, and this is when things really started to explode. We entered Asia for the first time. We expanded in Europe. We put our international headquarters in, guess which country? Anybody? Ireland, that's right. And why do we pick Ireland? Because they've got a great brewery there in Dublin, right? Guinness? Yeah, no. There's definitely there's some talent advantages, there's some tax advantages, and there's some privacy law relationships that make doing business there very appealing, especially if you're in the social networking space. So we opened the headquarters there. I will tell you, amongst us, that was not an easy decision, and it wasn't one that was made without a lot of fighting within the organization. Because if you put your international headquarters in a place like Ireland, for example, and you're a U.S. company, there are certain requirements you need to adhere to meet the validity of that entity being your international headquarters. You have to have most of your executives there. Well, if you're running a business throughout Europe, do you want to be living in Ireland? No. And most of my executives are like, So the way we got around that was we asked an American if he wanted to go work in Europe. He's like, yeah, Europe, awesome. And they're, Ireland's great. And so we actually put an expat out there for a while and helped us get started. These are I'm trying to be honest with you guys. These are sort of like some big decisions, but there's some real hard truths that kind of drive how you got to where you got to. And that's how we started in Ireland. Netherlands was what people say, well, how did you pick which countries to put employees into first? So after Ireland being our international entity, there's a real good reason why we went into the Netherlands next. Does anyone know why that would be? Take a guess. Anybody? What's that? They're one of the most highly networked countries that there is. And their familiarity and ease of use with internet technologies was very high. And we were finding the number of connections and the number of activities with connected members in the Netherlands was off the charts compared to most other countries. So we said, wow, maybe there's something we can learn there, that's beyond the culture that we could export to other countries. So we said, let's put a team in there. But we made some mistakes getting in as we started to enter Europe. And one of the mistakes was a very common mistake I think companies make, which is we're going to need to go into a country. We need a country manager. Yeah, right? You need to manage a business in a country. But what we found out was we have 3 vertical lines of business. We have the recruiting solution business, which I've told you about. Then we had a marketing solution business and a subscription business. And what happened was it was overly burdensome for us to have country managers setting different strategy for these 3 core lines of business. So we realized after about 9 months after we hired our Netherlands country manager, we don't need a country manager in the Netherlands. We need a hiring solution, marketing solution, and subscription GM for Europe. Living in which country? Ireland. That's right. You guys are listening. Very good. And hopefully not working at the pub. So in 2010, we launched some more languages: German, Italian, Brazil. So we'll do a little sort of like question for you guys. See if it surprised me. I didn't know. I'm sure some of you are much more savvy on the internet than I am. Releasing in local languages in each of those 3 countries. Okay, Germany, Italy, and Brazil. Which country do you think, after we released in local language, exploded in terms of new membership? Brazil. That's right. Okay, so you guys are much more savvy than I am. I had no idea. Exploded like 10 times as fast as any other country that we'd released in local language. In Germany and France, there's entrenched competitors in the networking space. In France, there's a company called Viadio. In Germany, there's a company called Zing. You guys are all nodding. You're familiar with them. We're not in the States, but we became familiar with them as we started to launch there. So let me show you a little bit about the member growth, and you can sort of start to draw some of your own conclusions around what happened. The company started in 2003. You see less than 1 million members that first year. And then by 2009, we'd already hit 57 million members. Okay? So something tipped in 2008, right? Something really tipped in 2008. And the only theory that we could come up with was that the job insecurity that people had due to the economic uncertainty of the world, right? That's another way of saying we got lucky at the right time in the stage of our life, right? There's a lot of smart people and there's a lot of great products we had. There's a little bit of wind at our back in the sailboat, if you will, on this one. That's very powerful. So now let's start to talk about my favorite subject, the people business. And that is, let me show you a little bit about the growth of the employee population. Okay? So from 2003, 2004, more than doubled. From 4 to 5, about 50% growth. From 5 to 6, again, about 50% growth. From 6 to 7, more than 100% growth. From 7 to 8, a little under 70% growth. 8 to 9, small growth. And again, 2008 was a very interesting year. Membership growth went up, but the employee hiring didn't go up so much. And there's a really key, one of the key reasons for that was because one of our key investors was a VC firm called Sequoia. And I don't know how many of you saw the memo that Sequoia put out in 2008 when the market collapsed, but it's going to be a nuclear winter, run for the hills, throw the jewelry overboard, we're all going to die, and you need to fire as many people as you can because it's going to be awful for many years. And so this was right before I joined, and the economy was scary, but we're a Sequoia company, so we said, oh, okay, I guess we got to let some people go. So it was the first time in the history of the company, because of the fear and uncertainty about the future, we decided to let a few people go. So something around 40 or 50 people. But here's an interesting thing, and it's going to happen to all of you at some point. You're going to be building your organization, you're going to hit a wall, you're going to have to let people go, and before you hit the wall, you're going to feel like everyone in your company is key. They're rowing the boat, they're carrying their position, they're critical to the organization. And when you're faced with a decision like, oh, we need to prune, you're going to find people that probably weren't the right fit for your company. And I wasn't there for this, but they told me the exercise wasn't difficult. When you're growing that fast and hiring that fast, keeping the quality bar high is difficult. And when the company's changing that fast, the people that were right last year may not be right for you this year. They may not be happy. And that's okay, because people don't know. I know that I'm happy when I'm 400. I don't know if I'm going to be happy when we're 1,000 people. That's fair, right? But what we found was an opportunity here that we thought was going to be really painful. Wasn't that painful. And we realized, oh, maybe we need to be smarter about how we hire so that we don't wind up a few years later. This is true, by the way, of every company I've worked in. That when times are good, everyone's doing great and everyone loves their employees. When times are bad, all of a sudden, we've got some problem employees over here. So you've got to try to find, in your own organizations, you need to try to find the right balance. In the middle of 2011, we hit 1,500 people, but by the end of that year, we had over 2,000 employees. So look at that ramp right there. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how does that guy have hair still when he's hiring that many people? And this became the critical story for us in our evolution. For us to be able to make it, for us to be able to win, we needed to be able to scale, we needed to be able to hire, we needed to be able to not smother the culture, and we needed to do that in one of the hottest environments competing for talent that has existed in the Valley. And that's where our headquarters is, right there, dead center in Mountain View, California. And so this was a huge challenge for us. We saw a window of opportunity for us to build something special. We saw a chance for us to grow the moat of our business so we could protect it as fast as we could. But it was going to be a huge challenge to be able to hire those people. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. Before I do that, I want to tell you about some of the conflicts we had. Yes, question?
May I just ask you one thing? Basically, when you did the restructuring
Yes.
with those 40 people, did you choose the people? Did you give the opportunity of people who were not that happy to join the restructuring?
No.
Because sometimes, at the moment in Spain, everybody is restructuring.
Okay, yeah, so So for people on the stream, the question is, when we did the restructuring, did we just select who the people were? Did we offer people a chance to be part of the restructuring if they were unhappy? We did the former. We chose who the people were that would be appropriate for that. I've never been with a company that has gone through that you have a choice to leave. And if you want to go, you can go. Do you know why? Because who usually goes when they have a choice to go? It's not always the people who are unhappy. It's the people who can, I'll take the separation package, thank you, and I'll go get another job. So the people who are very employable are sometimes the people you don't want to go. So yeah, so that's the way we did it. Does that help?
In Spain and Europe,
Yeah.
It's very common.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's like a double, it can be...
It's a risk. Yeah, it's a big risk. Yeah. So again, at the point of 2008, we're still mostly in California, so we were working with that framework. Yeah.
What is the average age of an employee in LinkedIn today?
Today it's around 33 years old. Yeah.
And women, male?
It's probably 75% men, 25% women. Yeah. And if I could say, the trend is the age is going down because we're hiring more new grads. Facebook's doing the reverse. They're starting young and they're hiring older, which is just an interesting, different shift because I've got friends over there and we compare notes on that. One of the interesting things about the business model of LinkedIn was one that I wasn't aware was going to be a challenge. And that was very core to who we were as a company. When you start growing a social network, you're faced with a pretty fundamental question. Who is really the most important in your ecosystem? The member, the customer, or maybe both? Okay? So I'll give you an example. As we started to get really good traction with membership, we would have companies that come to us and say, you know more about our employees than we do. How about you build us a directory? How about you build us a talent management website that we can use to help put the training together for our employees? Makes sense, right? And our salespeople would come running in and say, we got $1 million deals here just if we can get the design team to put this together really quickly, right? And so what do you think our CEO and our founder and our head of product said? No way. They said, no way are we going to do that. And why do you think that is? Why do you think that we weren't going to do something to the member that it's like build an internal directory for a company? Because the relationship we have with our member is that members first, which means we are not ever going to do something with your profile information that you don't want to do with it, okay? Such as give it to your company. And that is a core element of trust in this business, which it takes you years to earn and seconds to lose. If we started to give Google all the data for their employees without their employees giving permission, that would break the covenant of what is fundamental to the business. And if you piss off your members, you have no business, right? And we had to face this because it's hard when you're still trying to make it and you got to say no to $1 million deals. But you got to see the long haul. And that was one of the big debates that we had at many meetings. This wasn't like one meeting. This was months that we were arguing. Well, why shouldn't we get the revenue? Or why couldn't we do it in a way that the member would be okay with it? Things like this. But at the end of the day, they said, the member is first. We will never do something with the member's profile data that they don't want to do. And that was really, really a very fundamental step for us. Because even today, I was at JP Morgan, one of the biggest banks in the US. And they have this incredible room, it's like Minority Report, where they have all their executives on these boards and they can move them around and say, well, if this guy takes on the Latin American business and this guy can go run the emerging markets, they can move it around. And they wanted us to put our LinkedIn data in with their data because they have very confidential data about how big a business have they run or how many people have they hired in their career, things that they didn't want their employees to have in their LinkedIn profile. And they're, offering millions of dollars to us to build this for them. And we said, if you build it in such a way, we will help you, but your members, your employees have to opt in. You can't just put it in. So we created an opt-in switch, which got through some of that. But this is one of the core elements for us that was really tricky, was how do you navigate that member first, customer first proposition, right? Really, really tricky for us. And it got us very, very clear on something that was really important. All right, is the pace okay? Yeah? All right, great. All right, next thing I want to talk to you about is hypergrowth. Because when we started hitting that ramp that you saw from 2008, 9, and 10, it was really hard for us to keep up. And imagine, just put yourself in the shoes of the company. How do you build a company when you're doubling the size of the business every year, the number of employees, you're getting into new countries every year, so you have more people that are working away in new places. How do you communicate? How do you keep the culture intact? How do you make sure you're hiring quality people? How do you make sure you're not doing too much? How do you make sure that you're not confusing people and stepping on and building the same thing in different buildings? When I was at Cisco in 2001, there was 2 buildings next to each other working on the same thing, and they didn't know it. About 250 people in one building, 150 in another, working on the same thing, and they didn't know it. Good for us, right? That was a nightmare to discover that. And so we started to get very, very concerned with how we're going to be able to keep up with this hypergrowth, because there was lots of challenges. And there's also the fundamental challenge of scarcity of supply. Engineers are in scarce supply, still are today. But in 2009, 2010, it's the goal, it's the gasoline that powers the engine of Silicon Valley. And nobody knew who we were. Employees didn't know who we were, prospective employees didn't know who we were. So we had a big challenge. So I want to tell you a little bit about that challenge, because it's one of the reasons I have more gray hair today than I did back then. This is a picture of my neighborhood. Okay? How would you like to be recruiting next to the sexiest, most successful, most well-known company that treats engineers like gods in the world? How would you like to know how much fun that is? And how would you like to be next door to the company that's hiring all these people while your company is helping them do that because they're buying my product to hire against me? I remember the sales guy saying, "Hey, Steve, can you come close we think we got our first $1 million sales deal over at Google." I said, "No, I'm not going over there. They're going to hire against me. What do I want to do that for?" But this is one of the huge challenges that we had, is that these guys were making a lot more money and were much more aggressive with compensation than I could be, because I wasn't making as much as them. And that's just the beginning of the story. In 2010, Facebook and Google got into a war for talent. Did you guys read about that here? That all these Facebook guys started getting recruiting out of the Google, and Google started to say, "Okay, it's time for us to play, counterattack," and they started giving counter awards, counter offers to their employees, and until it hit such craziness that this was one of the headlines that hit one of the tech journals. Okay. Google offers staff engineer $3.5 million to turn down Facebook offer. And so this was not like a one-off. This was like a common situation that ultimately resulted in Google changing their entire compensation structure. Everyone's trying to have an advantage against the next player. And the players that are playing really tough in here and aggressive, Twitter, Facebook, Zynga was really hot, 2010, 2011, and they're hiring like hotcakes. And this is some of the craziness. This article, I took a snapshot of this about an hour after it came out. Look at the shares that have happened like in an hour. I was ready for engineers to come outside my office and say, "Hey, where's my $3.5 million to stay here," right? This is how absurd it was getting. But it was a huge distraction. But it made us really feel like we have to step up to the challenge. So let me tell you a little bit about that challenge, because if I think about some of the biggest hurdles we have, it was really trying to build that team to be able to build the company. And that's why I'm going to spend a little bit more time here than on some other things. The biggest challenge we had as an organization is to grow, and to be able to do that, we had to differentiate. Like, why would you want to come to LinkedIn versus going to the 20 other choices you have that are much more well-known brands than we are? They have much more deeper benefits and higher compensation. And I put that to all of you in whatever the markets that you're thinking of playing in. And if you're thinking of going to the Silicon Valley, you better have very thick skin and be ready for battle. Because you're going to have to figure out, why would someone want to come work for you when they have thousands of other choices that are very actively going against them? I didn't hire a single engineer maybe I hired one, but out of the 1,000 or so engineers that we hired at LinkedIn over the last 4 years, I can't remember one that didn't have 2 or 3 or 4 offers at the same time I was trying to hire them. Okay? This is how the reality is that we're facing. So we really had to think about doing that. We had to think about all the things I told you about before. How do we scale? How do we keep the culture vibrant? How do we make it such that everyone's not confused? And here's another really interesting element that not a lot of people know about LinkedIn. Nobody on the executive team had ever been through this before. Nobody. As I told you, Jeff was a first-time CEO. I'd never been in a private company. I'd never taken a company public. The CFO hadn't, our general counsel hadn't, our head of sales had never been a head of sales before. He's like, I don't want to be a head of sales. We're like, you're the head of sales because you don't want to be the head of sales. That's what we wanted. We don't want a normal sales function. And so on and so forth. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there in the world, and we're the first one. I'm happy to pop it for you if you ever have a need for me to intervene in your universe, that experience is the most important thing. Because we disprove that here. But let me tell you the other side of why I think this was powerful, that no one had the experience of taking a company public before. We wanted it. We were hungry. I came to LinkedIn with the dream of going public. Not because I wanted to work in a small company. I wanted to do something special. Everyone on the executive team had that same dream. We didn't all want to necessarily go public, but we wanted to make a big splash and build something. Because the company, even though it was 6 years old when I joined and it was 5 years old when our CEO joined, it was still soft clay. We could still shape it. It was still malleable. We could do something the way we wanted to. And that's so inspiring. And so that was the biggest thing that linked us as a leadership team. We didn't agree on everything. We didn't all have, hug and dance parties together and get drunk at night all the time. But we were very clear that we all wanted to build something special, and we wanted to be a great company where people would love to work. Might not make the most money, might not have the fancy benefits like the doggy massage at Google, or you have a baby, you get a nanny for 2 years, something like this. You couldn't get some of those. That's a joke, guys. Come on, work with me here. We couldn't provide some of those benefits, but we really were clear on that we wanted to build a special organization, and that turned out to be really, really beneficial for us. Building a new path and doing something different, super, super powerful. So when you're in a situation like we were as an executive team, and you're growing like crazy, and you're doing something new, what do you think you do in that situation? You're doing something you've never done before. What are you going to do usually? Who do you want to talk to? Somebody that's done it before, right? So exactly, experts. So you go to someone who's been there, done that. So I'll tell you another funny story. CEO Jeff and I were sitting at the whiteboard one day and we're like, God, why is it so hard to recruit? And maybe we need to hire some people in who've gone through the hypergrowth that we're going through. So let's list on the whiteboard all the companies that have gone through hypergrowth. And so we sat on the whiteboard and said, okay, so there's nobody. Because all the companies that are going through hypergrowth are going through it right now. Like Facebook's exploding down the street, Twitter is up in the city, and Zynga's going crazy. We had nobody to turn to, right? So we did say, well, maybe we could talk to some of the Google founders, but they were probably buying boats for their island or something like that. So what do you do when you can't find those people? That was the next question, right? You become a mibber, or no, you become a pioneer. You go and you do something that you've never done before, and you have to step up to the challenge. And so let me tell you a little bit about that challenge that we stepped up to. First, I'll give you some context on the executive team. Remember I was telling you we all shared that same connection? Well, we also shared another element. We were all what we call big company refugees. We never want to go to that big company again. Like I told you, we all learned more about what we didn't want to do than what we wanted to do, because we had seen so many things that were wrong. So as regards culture and values, I believe that a great company is founded on shared values. I totally agree on that. But I don't want values that are posters on the wall. I hate that. I don't want my values to be my screensaver. I don't want it preaching to me. I don't want someone to tell me. I got to feel it. And the CEO, Jeff, and I, we totally agreed on that one. And so we said, what does it mean to be great? What company do we want to be is the question that we asked ourselves. And so we started to tell each other, let's be the company that we want to be. And we weren't quite sure what that was, and we were more sure about what we didn't want to do than what we did want to do. And there was a lot of experimentation, right? I don't want to mislead you. This company's incredibly successful, but man, there's a lot of times we just didn't know how we should do it. We just sort of said, let's figure it out. We were making some of this stuff up as we went, honestly. And sometimes, like I said, we got lucky, but we definitely did, we made some mistakes. But when we decided, I'll never forget this, we sat in the executive room one day, because every month we would have one day where the whole team would go, and we would go off-site, and we would just talk about big strategy things. And the question was, should we go public? Or shouldn't we go public? Do you want to go public? So we went around the room, and it was 50-50. 50% said yeah, 50% said no. Then it was, if we go public, are you ready? Do you think you would be ready 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year? And there were varying degrees of votes on that one. And so then our CEO said, how are we going to know that we're ready to go public? If we are ready, how do we know what that looks like? And we said, we'll probably never really be fully buttoned up to be ready, so we're going to have to be good enough, right? And this is what, if you're a product manager, this is what you usually try to tell your engineers. Don't make perfect, make it good enough. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about that. But when we finally decided, okay, we're going to go IPO, and we have some things to do before we file for that, we need to clean up our infrastructure to be able to scale. We had to sit down, and when you write the filing document, it asks you millions of questions, and among them are, tell us about your culture, tell us about your values, tell us about this. And we'd never really written it down a lot, and so as a team we spent about a week or two back and forth iterating on something that really felt right. Like, what company do we want to be? And we finally settled on this concept of transformation. We want to be a place where you fundamentally change the trajectory of your career. You find your dream job. And that was something that was very similar to what our member value proposition was we want members to be able to find their dream job by coming to LinkedIn, right? So that was a real rallying cry for us as a leadership team. And that really helped us step up. So how do you win when you've got Google surrounding you, which is an unbelievably successful company, and all these other competitors and all the elements I just shared with you? Well, what we did was we said talent is first. So everybody is a recruiter now. Everybody. And if you're a manager and you have a job open, you spend at least 2 days full-time just hiring talent. So then the next question is, well, how do you grow a business when your management team is just hiring? And we said, you know what, we're building for next year and the year after and the year after. That is our business right now, is building this company and building this team. And we will take a hit on some revenues, which you can do when you're not a public company. You don't have investors, measuring every little bit of your EBITDA. You can take a little bit of a risk and focus your energy where you want to be. We made, for 3 years, hiring, onboarding, developing that new talent, and making it productive quickly, the #1 priority. And we were relentless about that. And we would, anyone in our ecosystem, our chairman, our founder, our board members, if we had a key employee that wasn't sure they wanted to join, they were part of the interview process. We got everyone on board on that one. And we subordinated everything else in the company to making that happen. That was, I think, something that was a huge decision point for us that facilitated some of the success that we had. In fact, we got so good, and you saw the chart there, right? Like 900 to 2,000 people in 1 year. We got so good that Morgan Stanley upgraded our stock in 2011 after they saw how effective we were at being able to hire and onboard people. Because what was happening as we were growing is that they recognized the revenue per employee was growing as we were adding people, which is an unbelievable achievement. It's like your managers are spending all the time hiring and onboarding, not necessarily developing new products or meeting with customers, but you're succeeding. And that's an incredible achievement that we were able to realize that helped us stand out in the crowd. Okay, next thing. Here's the reality for those of you that are getting ready to or already running your own organizations right now. The reality is it's a transparent universe. People know whether your company is a good place to be or not a good place to be, whether you have high integrity or low integrity, whether you pay people well, whether you develop your people. They know these things. And so what we were and highly attuned to at LinkedIn was making sure that since everyone's going to know how we are as an organization, let's make it a great place. Let's build great experiences for our people. Let's find ways for them to have fun. Let's find ways for them to celebrate and be different and give to the community and show what is really awesome about being here at the company. And so what we started to do was invite inspirational speakers from all over the world. People like Deepak Chopra, people like President Obama, he came to see us, Thomas Friedman, Susie Orman. We had many CEOs from a lot of the companies in the Valley, authors, writers, motivational speakers would come join us. Here's a picture of Martin Luther King Jr.'s son, Martin Luther King Jr. III, and he came to visit us. Also, there's a guy that you might recognize near the bottom there, Sal Khan, who's the founder of the Khan Academy, completely revolutionizing elements of education. Well, they would come and they would just totally inspire our employees. And they would love, we'd just take an hour, about an hour a week. Sometimes we'd have 2 speakers, sometimes we'd have 3, and people loved it. And we said to our employees, tell us who you want to bring in, or invite your people from your universe that you think are motivational, inspirational. And then what started happening when word started getting out is these people started inviting themselves to us. The most noteworthy being President Obama. He said, I want to visit you. I'll tell you a funny story. So this is predating the last election, okay? And Obama calls and says, I can come, but I can only come next week. And we're like all the days at LinkedIn, all the weeks at LinkedIn, we are super busy. So I remember sitting around the executive room and the CEO says, hey, the White House called, Obama wants to visit. What do you guys think? Do we have time, to have Obama come visit us? And then he said, wait a second, I can't believe I just said that. But he said, no, seriously, is it okay? Do you want Obama to come visit? And we're like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So, but that's some of the craziness that you get caught up in. Similarly, Deepak Chopra shows up at our office for the day he's supposed to speak to our employees. But he arrives an hour early. And I get a phone call, Steve, Deepak Chopra's here, he's in the lobby. I go, what do you mean he's in the lobby? He's an hour early. I'm in the middle of an interview. I'm trying to, this is the company priority. I can't meet with Deepak. And I said, what am I saying? Deepak Chopra's here. I said, so I got someone else to meet the candidate, and I went to go meet Deepak. And, amazing experience to be able to have these people share their ideas with you. But when I tell you it's a transparent world, when you have excitement in your company, your employees start talking about it, it creates this viral loop of excitement. And your brand gets more exciting. And that's what we started to do. I want to pause for a second here because remember when I told you that everyone on the executive team was relatively new to this whole experience of going IPO? There was something also, I think, important that we all shared, is that we wanted to be the best in the world. And I don't know if you've ever had someone sit you down and say, I want you to be the best in the world at what you do. I had that one more time earlier in my career when John Chambers, I was working on the acquisition team at Cisco. And John we sat us down and he goes, guys, we're going to be the best of the world at acquisitions. And I went, whoa, no one's ever said that to me. Everyone's usually said, just do a great job or do your best. Best in the world? Whoa. And he said, and this is back to Cisco, John said, I want to be the best in the world because if we are the best at acquisitions, people will want to be acquired by us, people will not be afraid, and people will sell their companies to us for less money if we're the best at it. And sure enough, we bought a whole host of companies that Lucent and Nortel were trying to get, and we won them over for less money because they said, you treat us right, you're a great organization, you have high integrity, and you won't smother our technology, you'll elevate it on a platform. But this was a big rallying cry for us. We all wanted to be world-class, and we believed that we could pull that off. We really did. But we didn't believe necessarily that the rest of the organization was going to believe it. And this was a big challenge for us, is how do you get the team that is, in the shadow of the big companies in the Valley to believe that, hey, we could do something really special here, because confidence is so important when you're going through the tough times that we were going through. And we spent a lot of time with employees talking about, we want to be world-class. What does that mean to you? Don't you want to be world-class too? And what does that look like? And when we would have speakers in, we would ask them, talk about that when you're the greatest at something. What does that mean? And we would bring athletes in too, who had done world-class things. How did you do that? What did you think about? What did it mean to you? What kind of sacrifices did you need to make? But that's something I encourage all of you to think about. If you set that bar at a reasonable level, you're probably going to hit it. If you set it at a world-class level, you still might hit it. LinkedIn's arguably hitting that now, but that was something we actually strove for, which I think is worth pointing out. A couple of thoughts on culture that I want to give you. I had a big advantage at LinkedIn that I didn't have anywhere else I'd ever worked. Everywhere else I'd ever worked, I had to go in and change the culture. At LinkedIn, I got to build it. Didn't have to change anything. There wasn't much. Because what the culture was growth and change and new. That's great to work with. I can work with that. And I worked with that back in my Cisco days. But I believe that's one of the biggest differentiators for success, especially for digital organizations, is what kind of culture you build. And it's one of the most challenging things to wrestle with as a leader, because there's no formula, there's no textbook to that. It's different with every group of people. But what we did to try to make that as real as we could is we engaged everyone in that. In the hiring process, we said, we want you to come in and build a great product, build great products, and build a great company, and change the world. And we sincerely meant that. When we had our engineers do hacks, we asked them, think about ways that you can not just build new products, but you can change the way we do business within this company. Because we really wanted their footprints everywhere. And that's so empowering, especially as you get bigger. Because people are expecting, and we saw this in all the surveys we did. We did surveys every 6 months. People are expecting that the world is going to get more bureaucratic. And they're going to get marginalized. And their job is going to get less interesting. And so when you don't let that happen, or you try to prevent that happen, or they see you trying to fight against that, you definitely get some allies and you win some faith from the employees. But this is something that we spend a lot of time doing. We looked around the valley and said, what can we do that's different? And one of the things we came up with was something called In-Day. And that was every month we had one Friday where you did whatever you wanted to do. You want to work from home and smoke a cigar and wear your pajamas and walk around like Hugh Hefner? Fine. Go for it. You want to build a house? You want to go teach in your kid's school? You want to go on a hike? You want to give blood? You want to help war veterans figure out how to find a job? What do you want to do? Whatever it is, we want you to find inspiration in life and breathe in and meet other people that you work with in a different context. And guess what? When we introduced that, people were like, what? What are we going to do? We're going to take a day off? Honestly, people are like, huh? The engineer's like, we're going to do what? Like, do whatever you want to do. They weren't used to that. We're like, that shocked me. I was like, wow, man, you give me a free day, I'll take it up, no problem. They were so used to, focus, focus, focus. And that worried us. I was worried about burnout from the day I walked in to the day I left. Yes?
What did you use this Friday usually for example?
Yeah, so what did we use the Friday for? So, for me?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me add a little more to how we tried to structure the day. No meetings, and, you can hold your applause, no emails. Do you know it's impossible? Do you know how hard it is? Like you turn off the phone, The guy who's recording says you got to turn your phone off for the presentation. I know I'm not going to take a phone call when I'm presenting to you, but I don't want to turn my phone off. I want to feel the buzz of a new message coming in. Right? I don't know. What's my problem? So what I would do was I would usually do skip level meetings. So my organization got so big, I didn't get to meet a lot of the people that we just hired. So I would, a lot of times I would meet new employees. I would visit a new office. But I would usually try to be the champion of, everyone's like, what's the executive team? Are they doing it too? Are they playing the Frisbee game? Are they doing the mini golf? I would always go give blood. Here's one of my favorite stories. So Stanford Blood Bank has a bus. They come around and they tap you like a keg of beer, give blood. And so this was a very stressful time for us. I think it was like 2010. Guys are working late. We have lots of products that are slipping, so we had to put in extra hours. And when the engineers work late, my team liked to work late so we can make sure everyone's okay and so forth. So the blood bank comes one day. And I go in and I sign up. And I was giving blood. And I was asking the doctor, I said, how's it going? Do you get a lot of my employees here today? They said, unbelievable. They said, your employees have been, more active giving blood than any of the other companies around here. So it made me proud. But what he said next made me really excited. He said, and you have something special going on here. I go, what's that? He goes, you have the lowest blood pressure of any company in the valley. I said, no way. I said, you better check again. I said, I was expecting, high stress. Whoa. But that was like, wow, low blood pressure, right? Which made me realize, what day are they drawing the blood? Not a work day, in day, right? It was like almost like you take the pressure out of the tire for a day and you go back, but I would do that. I wanted to, the other thing I tried to do is I tried to show up the engineers, and I tried to come up with new product ideas that they hadn't thought of. So I would get some together and we would challenge that. Or we would have, my favorite day was the kids at work day. We would bring the kids to the office a lot. You see people light up that don't normally light up, and it just brings a whole new dimension to the office. So just to show you right now, when I'm talking about this, most of you are smiling, okay? You weren't smiling 5 minutes ago when I'm talking about hiring, recruiting, culture, blah. But this, right, even just thinking about that makes your heart feel good. And when people are feeling proud, they want more people, their friends to come work with you. This is magic, right? This is how you get by the people paying more, doggy massage next door, all this other stuff, right? And that's how you get the conversation away from compensation, if you will. So I've been around culture my whole life. I studied it in college. Doing acquisitions is a big part of, when you're merging teams, culture is always a big dimension of that. And I've given it a lot of thought. And one of the things I want to leave with you on this topic before we finish up a few more slides is the best way to think about culture is to think about your decisions. Every decision you make, how you share information with your employees, how you don't share information, who you hire, how you conduct yourself, how you dress, when you come to work, when you go home, how you talk to people, when you talk to people, how your office looks. Do you have an office and your employees don't have an office? You're making 1 million decisions a day that's defining who you are and who your culture is. And be aware of that. I don't want you to have to second guess every decision, but be aware that culture is the actions that you do all the time, right? And we struggled a lot with some of the decisions that were big for us. Facilities was always a big issue. People like the big cue balls. People hate the big cue balls. I want just a table. I want my own office. I want the special chair. I want the special monitor. I want all these, there's all these fights all the time. But how you broker those and how you make decisions, that's usually the biggest indicator of how you're going to do it. And where you can, I strongly encourage you to not to feel like, well, I'm the leader. I have to make all the decisions. If you do, that's a cultural decision you're making right there, okay? And it's going to tell a message to the people that work for you. If you want a more participative style, you say, okay, I'd like a recommendation from you. That's option number 2. Option number 3 is delegate the decision, right? But there's so many different ways of doing that, whatever the decision is. But I can't tell you how important it was for us. When I started at LinkedIn, I got to tell you, our CEO is like, culture, He's like, I'll talk to you because you're the HR guy and you care about the culture stuff. But, he was so tired of being beaten in the head with these people saying, well, you're not walking the talk. And our culture says you got to walk the talk. Have you ever worked in a place like that? Like, they have the culture and they're measuring you. You're not doing the culture number 3 here. It says you have to be open and honest. You're not open and honest, right? That's when it's wrong. And he worked in companies like that. But when he started to see what we were doing with in-days and how people were loving it and we were getting more effective at hiring, he goes, you know what? Our culture, he goes, I never believed it. Our culture is our biggest strategic advantage. Here's a professional network, right? Everyone used to think, oh, you guys are all dressed up and all serious and uptight because they're professional. All the Facebook guys, they're having fun. You guys are all serious. We started to break that when people came in because we really got culture was what it was about. All right, so I just want to give you a few more slides. Bear with me here. A couple of things about how we structured the organization that really helped us deal with growth and with culture. And again, like everything I'm talking about today, it may not work in your organization or it may not work for you. It worked for us, for sure. One thing that you need when you're growing this fast is feedback from the people, right? I believe the best form of feedback is talking, verbal, because I get context, I get tone, I get body language, I get everything. But not everyone's comfortable doing that, especially if you've got a high engineering universe, because they tend to be a little more on the introverted side, as a general rule. So every 6 months we did a pulse survey. Very quick. Took you 3 minutes. 3 questions on your manager, 3 questions on your job, and about 4 or 5 questions on the culture. And then we asked you, would you recommend this company to your friend to work here? We called it an ENPS, Employee Net Promoter Score. You guys familiar with Net Promoter Score? Sort of, would you shop at this store? It kind of came out of retail and products. We asked people that. We got over 85% participation every time we did that survey. And we got enormous intelligence that helped us get a pulse. And it wasn't like this long, painful, we're going to have to do 20 things different after we get the survey. It was really quick, give us the feedback, what's working, what can we do better? We pick one thing to fix, and then we'd focus on the 4 or 5 things that were going great, and we make sure we didn't stop doing them. And that was first. A lot of times when people do a survey, they say, oh, we've got to fix what's wrong. Actually, you should first continue doing the things you're doing well. That's one of the most important things that you can get. So we would do that on a regular basis. And when you're moving fast, enormously valuable to us. We changed something significant in our organization because changed the entire trajectory of the company because of a pulse survey. Our engineers said, our code stack sucks. It's slow. It takes forever to release code. I hate it. I fix it. I have to put in long nights because the stack is a piece of garbage. And so we stopped. After that pulse survey, we said, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And they said, we need to stop making new products for 2 or 3 months and just fix the stack and get everyone to fix it. And we said, okay. And they said, really? And we said, yeah, okay. Let's put a plan together. We call it Project Inversion. We threw every technical resource in the company, stopped making new products before we were public. This is one of the key things that we did because it was taking engineers weeks to release a line of code when it should take minutes or hours at the most. People believe you when you start actioning things in their survey. I know it's common sense, but I've worked so many places where they did the survey and it just went off into the ether and I never heard from it again. Giving the employees a sense that bureaucracy isn't happening was another thing that we really wanted to encourage for our employees. So issue come up, we would jump on it as a leadership team to try to fix it as fast as we can. So let me tell you another one. Communication. Huge, huge issue. How are you going to communicate when you've got 25 offices around the world in, about 15 different countries? What we decided to do was we're going to limit email communication. We're not going to send company announcements. Very, very rarely did we do that. The only announcement we would send is the company meeting is happening on this day. And we would have company live meetings every other week. And that was the one stream of distribution for information. Super powerful. I've worked at places where you just get so many messages from corporate, you just delete, delete, delete. And what it also did, which wasn't an intended outcome, but it was one of those nice unintended outcomes, is it created a shared experience. We all were in the same meeting at the same time, and we could promote the consistency of the message and the culture and the context all in the same room at the same time. Super, super powerful. After every all hands, every executive was tasked with meeting with their teams at least once a month and having an all hands. So especially as we got bigger, you had to meet with your team at least once a month. And then if you're in a time zone that couldn't attend the meeting live, you needed to show that meeting together as a group, not like individual download on my computer while I'm doing 6 other things, in a meeting all together so that you can have, again, that shared experience. Really important. The other thing is we had a company group, like an internal bulletin board of exchanging ideas and feedback. And people would go there and say, who didn't clean the espresso wand? It's disgusting. Or who ordered that Chinese food 6 days last week? It's awful. Or, you know what? We really need to invest more in this product because I got this feedback from the customer. All kinds of constructive feedback would happen there. And executives would be chiming in and including furthering the dialogue as well. Is really, really helpful. Come on, laptop. Here we go. Bear with me here. Here we go. Yeah, no, Mac. Thank you, Steve Jobs. Infrastructure. A couple last points. We were very particular on how many people could be managed by a manager. When we started to get 1,000 people, we said, we don't want you managing more than 7 people. You could have no more than 7 people. And the depth of the organization, we never wanted more than about 7 or 8 at the most. And that was because a lot of our leaders had worked at places that I won't mention, Yahoo, where there were CEO reporting to them as an SVP, reporting them as a VP, then an EVP, then an AVP, then a senior director, then a director, then an associate director, a junior director, a senior manager, a lead, and then you. Right? We would say, where do you want to work? That company or the one right here? Where information can flow and you can have access to these people. So we were maniacal about making sure that we didn't have that. But that's hard. It gets hard when the really superstar guy on your product team comes and says, you know what? I went to MIT and my best friend's a vice president at eBay. And I'm a manager. And I was better than him. How come I'm a manager? And I'm going to alumni day back at school next week. He goes, that sucks. I want to be a higher title. That's when the rubber meets the road. Are you going to really hold down then? Because title means something to some people. And in some cultures, it's even more powerful than others. But we held the ground and we said, you know what? A director here is a VP there. Or a manager here is a director there. And that's the way it's going to be here. You know, and I hope you believe that. But if you don't, and that title is more important than building something special here, then you need to go there. And you got to say, I'm okay with that. We didn't break. You got to hold to your principles on that, and that was a really important one for us. But it was not easy having those conversations, especially with like the one I just told you about. Okay, learning and development. I'm here to tell you that until like 2010, we never held a classroom learning experience for any of our employees. It was all on the job. We believe that the most fertile ground for learning is doing and acting and being part of something in your day-to-day, or doing something different, taking on a new project, going on an international assignment, or taking a trip, or doing something different. That's the learning that we fostered. You know, and a lot of people have this belief that I'm only learning something unless I'm in some kind of classroom and there's a professor and a lecture and some PowerPoints, right? And what we did do was we had all of our executives deliver content to employees that they were passionate about, whatever that was. How to be a good mentor, how to give difficult feedback, how to do effective budgeting, how to inspire people to achieve a greater outcome. Whatever that was, we had executives do that, and after the executives did it for a few months, we had the next level of leaders in the organization. Because all we wanted to talk about something you're passionate about, and it created greater connective tissue. So that was another big thing that we did. Okay, Mr. Mack, here we go. All right, so in closing, if I haven't beat on culture strong enough, stick around and I could hang out with you at the pub later and I could tell you more about culture. It's the biggest differentiator for our success that I believe at LinkedIn. Everyone's got to be all in. What we had is a leadership team that wanted to build a special company. That's how we were able to be successful, and that's going to continue to pay huge rewards as they grow and that they scale. You can win against people who have more than you. You can. Trust me. That's all I've done the last 4 years. You know, I still, when I meet friends that work at these competitive companies, I have the whole pitch. Like, I can hire you away from that company. It's hard for me to turn it off because we got so passionate around, if we meet someone from these companies, this is the story that we will tell them why you want to come work for us. I'm still like, I can't turn it off. And so when someone told me like, hey, we're trying to hire this person out of this really great company, I said, let me do it. I know how to do it. It's really not something that I want to encourage you to be afraid of, because you're always going to be in a market where people have other choices. If you build your organization right, you're going to be able to win there. Lastly here, my experience in this world of, especially the world of Silicon Valley, is people are not looking for a job anymore. I really believe they want an adventure. They want an experience. We had one employee, which I didn't know was it an aberration, a one-off, or a canary in the coal mine. They quit LinkedIn after 1 day. And if you're the head of talent like I was, it's like, oh my God, what did we do? Did we offend this person, or did somebody smash their car in the parking lot on the first day? Why would they quit after 1 day? Sat the person down, and I said, why did you decide to leave? And this is the story that they told me. They said, Steve, LinkedIn is a great company. When I was interviewing with you, I was interviewing with Facebook. The project they had was much more exciting to me than the work here. Even though the work's good, that work was more interesting. during the interview process, Facebook turned off that project and they went dark on me. So I just followed through with you. Until yesterday, the day before I started with you, they called and said the project's lit up. Would you like to come? So I'm going to go work for them. And I said, well, are they paying you more? And he said, no. And I went, oh, I don't want to be paying more than Facebook. And then I said, are the benefits more? And he says, no, it's about the same. I said, and then he said something which really stuck with me. He says, and my parents and all my friends think it's the right thing to do. I should go do what I want to do. He couldn't care less about my company. I don't think he could care less about Facebook. And we felt like we've invested hours and months recruiting you and time and invested in wanting to have you have a bright future here. And he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go over there. Yeah. And so that was sort of message number one to me. Message number two, I was on a panel with a Stanford business school professor recently, and she said, students today, something similar, students today join a boss, not a company. So it's interesting because you've got so much information at your disposal now through all the social channels. You can find out who's the person I want to work for, what's the place I want to be, what's the project I want to work on. So think about that. My belief is in the future, as you're recruiting, you're not going to post a job out on some job board or even post it on LinkedIn. You're going to post a movie trailer of what it's like to work at your company. That's what I believe people are going to get excited about. Not like, oh, you need 6 years experience and a Bachelor of Science in this and 6 years in this industry. It's like, when you're here, this is what it looks like, and this is what we do, and this is how we change the world. And these are the things you're going to make happen when you come join our company. Get people's blood moving. That's, I think, what's going to happen. So, in closing, I would like to say just a couple final things. Go for it. Build the company that you guys want to build and make your heart sing, and others are going to want to be a part of your team. Thank you guys very much. All right, so if you have to go, I don't feel embarrassed. You need to go, but if you want to stay for questions, we've got time for some questions. Yeah? Okay. Hi.
Thank you for everything. You have talked about how the managers have never been head of anything before. The CEO had never been CEO before. Yeah. What do you think is the good percentage, the good proportion between what you know on your field and the ability to be a manager? What do you think is more important? To know the skills, to know the field, or to know, to be able to take decisions?
That's a million-dollar question. Is it better to know, or is it better to be able to teach something, or do you have to be a master of the craft to actually lead it? So I'll answer that with a bit of a caveat. My experience has been, especially with technical people, is they respect people who've done it and people who are more aware than they are. Okay? Until they meet a leader who can teach them through the Socratic method, which is through discovery, through questions and answers, so they can find it on their own. I would rather have a leader who can teach someone how to fish than who does the fishing for them. But I've also worked with leaders who are fantastic role models, and they show people how to do it, and it works, right? So the short answer is there is no right method there, because how I learn, how you learn, who I respect, you respect, it's going to be different. So, I'm a big believer the rainbow of your leadership team should be very colorful, and it looks very, very different. And that definitely was the case for us. Let me tell you a little bit more about the biggest mistake we made at LinkedIn when it comes to this, what you're talking about. And it hurts even talking about it today because it ruined the life of two people that were very, very senior executives who left really big jobs. We thought when we were around 200 million that we're going to be a billion-dollar business. So remember those questions I put up? What do you do when you don't know what to do? You go find people. So we said, let's hire people who've led billion-dollar businesses. Makes sense, right? None of us said, we'd been companies that had been in the billions, but we never led it. So let's bring someone in. They're going to teach us stuff, right? Well, guess what? The people we hired hadn't grown a billion-dollar business. They'd led it. two completely different skill sets that were needed. And we hired two amazing people. They left great jobs. In one case, we relocated a guy. 6 months later, they looked like death. They were miserable. And they were a wreck. And we said, what's going on? You're the guy who's supposed to teach us. They said, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. And so that was a huge lesson for us, that the experience of growth and learning and building something, even not at the scale of $1 billion, because there's just not a lot of people who've done that from nothing out there. There will be at LinkedIn in a little while if you want to go hire some of those people. But hopefully that wasn't recorded. But that's just something, that surprised us, right? That really, we thought experience at that level, but that was the wrong experience, right? Yeah. Thanks.
And three skills every employee at LinkedIn has, like general skills.
Can I what?
Can you name three skills every employee at LinkedIn has, like general skills, like result-oriented or good at teamwork?
Yes. So I think first, tolerance of ambiguity, okay? Being very independent. We would tell people in the interview, if you need a map, if you need instructions, this is not the place for you, okay? So you've got to be a self-starter, independent, high tolerance for ambiguity, and you have got to love chaos, okay? Now, here's the thing. I studied chaos theory in my master's program. And the one thing I have never forgotten from studying chaos theory is, what does chaos create? Energy. Chaos creates energy. It's powerful. It's not something necessarily to be afraid of. So I like it crazy, right? Like for me, it's like every day is Christmas. There's something under the tree that's wrapped up. I'm going to open it. I don't know what it is, And so that's, being able to be ready for that. Here, this is the digital business. Listen, we could never put a business plan together that we could forecast 2 years out, that we weren't laughing. Like 2 years, we don't even know what's going to happen in 2 years, right? We're building the company thinking, oh my God, Google just came out with Google+. They're coming after us. Facebook, maybe they're going to be Workbook. They're going to come after us. Chatter, Salesforce.com, maybe they're going to come after us. We're paranoid, right? So a lot of it's like we're just trying to build something that's going to sell, and we're not always thinking about all these other things. Yeah. Any other questions?
I was sorry if you said it before, but why did you leave the company?
Oh, why did I leave the company? I sort of... example of what LinkedIn's all about is when Jeff and I sat down, and when you get to the point where like we were public and things were happening, we would just sit there and go, can you believe this? We're so successful. We would just go, no. I was sitting in his office one day and he goes, come here. What is it? I said, what? He goes, I've got my introductory speech for President Obama. I want you to listen to it and tell me what you think. I go, what? I'm coaching my boss to introduce the president. It's crazy stuff. But what we wanted the LinkedIn to be a place when we thought about what's our legacy that we want to lead is that our leaders will be the next generation of the best leaders in technology companies in the world. We didn't want to be afraid of people leaving. We wanted the alumni. Like in the States, I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but the PayPal has generated like 8 or 9 leaders for very significant organizations in the world of technology right now. And that's what we want to be. We want to be the company, when you take a leader from LinkedIn, wow, there's a superstar. And so I hit a point after about 4 years, I'm like, you know what? I've been working for 30 years. I'm super tired. I've had the best job in the world for 4 years. I'm going to take a break. I can afford to take a break now. I've earned it. And what I was spending time doing the 6 months before I left was helping some of our founders start their business, and I just loved it. So that's what got me involved with Alfredo and No Matters in San Francisco. Was he's just him and an idea and 1 or 2 other people, and I'm like, wow, I'm so excited. And helping them, helping share some of the things that I learned. So that's why. Yeah. Get out while I still have my. Anything else?
Yes, we're closing. So, thank you very much, Steve. Always a pleasure. Incredible speech. we can continue having a beer at the Irish bar as usual, so that's not a problem. I would like to thank you very much for helping people like Alfredo Rivela. Some of these people had Alfredo as teacher in the MIP. People who are starting a company, who are far away from home, who don't know the business there, who don't have the network, and having the chance of meeting people like you who are doing that out of nothing. Thank you for helping us, because you are helping us, and thank you for sharing the way you are, because it's very much the spirit of the people who are here.
Great.
So thank you very much, and I have to invite you to a beer.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's how it's coming. So we always